Hey friends, welcome back to Big Nate's Whiskey Lounge. I am Nate, coming at you with another review video. This is not going to be versus simply because one's a bourbon, one's a rye, but we're just going to be reviewing Wild Turkey 101 bourbon and rye. These are pretty standard classics. The 101 bourbon is more well known than the rye. This is kind of the college pour from back in the day, and because of that, it's kind of interesting. In the normal non-whiskey world, Wild Turkey 101 gets kind of looked down upon because it's the college pour. They're like, oh, Wild Turkey's, that's our college pour, that's our past. You know, I have bad memories of Wild Turkey. But if you're in the whiskey world, if you're in the whiskey community, Wild Turkey 101 is actually pretty highly acclaimed as being a very, very good standard pour. And well, you know, it's fantastic. So I'm going to give these a pour real quick. We have the bourbon, which the mash bill on the bourbon is going to be 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. Now, what's interesting is that the bottle claims that it's a high rye, which actually, but that's not. So in the industry, not that I'm in the industry, but you get what I'm saying. In the whiskey industry, high rye is considered at 18 or more percent. So in my opinion, this is not high rye, but they can mark it however they want. And then the Wild Turkey 101, I actually looked up the mash bill on this, and the mash bill for the Wild Turkey 101 rye is 51% rye, so that's pretty standard for Kentucky. We get a lot of the ryes out there, a good percentage of them are going to be 95.5, and those are going to come a lot of times from MGP in Indiana. But when Kentucky actually distills their own rye, oftentimes, they're going to come in right at the 51% mark. So this is 51% rye, 37% corn, and 12% malted barley. And they call it high proof. 101 proof is kind of like second tier proof in my opinion. 80 to 90, 90 to 100. This is right there at 101. So let's give the bourbon a nosing. Very sweet on the nose on the bourbon. I'm getting caramel, a little bit of oak, kind of burnt caramel, and then there's vanilla in there too. Kind of like a Werther's, but with a little dialed back. I'm getting, there's corniness on it. Don't know exactly how old it is. Let me see if this says. We know that it's at least 4 years old because, yeah, it's non-age stated. But it is straight Kentucky bourbon, which means that it is a minimum of 2 years old. But because it's non-age stated, we know that it is less. It is more than 4. Same thing with the rye. And then these are both liter bottles. These are both the old labels. So they have come out with new labels, which kind of an embossed turkey on them. Really cool looking bottles. These are the old labels. These are both liter bottles, and I believe this is 28 and this is about 30. I think they're not expensive, which is why they were college pours back in the day. I'm gonna nose the rye as well at the same time. The nose on the rye is softer than the bourbon. It's more subtle. There's kind of a color difference too. This is a lot lighter than this is. So maybe it's younger, but maybe rye doesn't emit as much color, but it really wouldn't matter because they both go into the barrel clear, so it really would just be age. They're both the same proof. I can get a little bit of the anise, the black licorice. I'm getting a little bit of that, and that's pretty much the only thing I'm getting right now. Maybe a little bit of honey, a little bit of vanilla. But because it's a barely rye, which, like I mentioned, is kind of, a lot of Kentucky distilleries do come out with that. Like Pikesville is a 51% rye. I believe Elijah Craig, their rye is 51% rye. Knob Creek might be as well. But so between the two, the nose on the bourbon is a little bit more interesting just because it's a little bit more present. But nothing killing as far as The ethanol's not hurting. It's not. You kind of have to dig a little bit. For being what I would call a low rye bourbon, or lower, they call it high. That's fine. But for being a lower rye bourbon, 13%, I actually pick up quite a bit of rye spice on the taste of the bourbon, which is interesting. It's good. It's classic. It's kind of, it's like an 88 mile an hour fastball down the middle. It's fast enough to be, most people are going to swing at it and miss. I don't know where I'm going with that metaphor, but it's pretty much right down home plate. But it's not getting any crazy, any fancy, but it is just really, really good. And Wild Turkey 101 is just so consistent. And that's why it is beloved by the whiskey community. And it's cheap enough to where the college community likes it. So, all right, Wild Turkey 101 bourbon. Very good. If I had to give it a ranking, if we're doing a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going with a 7.0. It is really good for what it is. There's a lot better whiskey. There's a lot better whiskey from Wild Turkey. However, there's also worse whiskey from Wild Turkey too. So 7.0 because it can be seen as a utility bourbon, and a lot of people like it's a good shot pour for people that choose to do that. It can make a good mixture because it's at a price point where I'm not going to get frustrated, and it's really good neat. This is a really good pour for neat when I don't want to think about it, but don't want to be taken away. I don't know. I've had some pours where I've been so disappointed with them and so bored by them that I waste time thinking about it because of how poorly impacted me. And then there's also whiskeys that you want to pay attention to that are kind of like the higher end stuff, like the Wild Turkey Master's Keep 1 or any of the Wild Turkey Master's Keeps, because it's more expensive. It's that's 101 proof, but a lot of the other ones are some of them are higher proofs. You want to give it more time, and you want to give it just more time that it deserves. And Wild Turkey 101 fits right between the two. I'm like, ooh, I like this, and I can drink it without thinking about it because I'm enjoying myself. I'm not overly enjoying myself, and I am not having a bad time whatsoever. So Wild Turkey 101 fits that bill. Let's do the rye. Okay, rye spice shows up more on the palate. Kind of shows up right away. It's lingering a little bit. I'm getting the black licorice on the tongue. There was a guy in my church. Well, he is a guy in my old church. I guess I'm kind of in the middle of transitioning. A guy in my old church that I've known my entire life, and he always gave out candy. There was a phase where my brother and I actually liked black licorice. I don't hate it now. It's just I'm not going to waste my time eating it. And so he would always have black licorice on him. And this tastes like a black licorice hard candy. Not like a licorice, not like a Twizzler or a Red Vine. By the way, Red Vines suck. But this is the hard candy. And I actually got the texture of the hard candy on the taste. It does taste a little young. So it's a lot of the anise. There's some decent, good rye spice, but it is slightly more boring than the bourbon. I would use it for a cocktail bourbon. It would be a daily drinker. I could drink this daily. This would be a good daily drinker if, again, campfire, not wanting to think about much. This would be good for that. It's a little more boring than the bourbon is, as far as comparison. But it is good. And Wild Turkey just crushes it year after year. The Russells are fantastic. So this has been Wild Turkey 101 Bourbon and Rye. Good stuff. Make sure, just recommendation, have a bottle of at least the bourbon in your collection. The rye, I recommend having a bottle, but at least have, I don't think any whiskey collection, any person that takes themselves seriously with whiskey wouldn't have a bottle of Wild Turkey 101 in your collection. You don't have to have every Master's Keep, but you should have Wild Turkey 101. So that's been Big Nate's Whiskey Lounge. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Cheers and have a great day.